Trademark. I'm Dave.
I'm Sean.
Welcome to Barstools and Bandtalk, everybody.
Welcome. It's been a little while since we've done an interview that we've had, so this is going to be a good one tonight. Can't take any of the credit. Dave did the research for this, and I think that this lady that we're going to speak with is doing a lot of very, very similar things to what we're trying to accomplish. So I think there's going to be some good information shared here tonight, and I'm very excited to talk to her.
Folks, we're going to have Erin Benjamin. Erin Benjamin is the president and CEO of the Canadian Live Music Association based out of Ottawa. And she's a former musician herself. She says she retired in 2003. We might get a little information over about that. Spent a lot of time down here. She's a member of the board of the ECMAs as well. The folks that she's affiliated with and bringing live music back to the forefront is astounding, and our interests are very much aligned, and this is kind of why I thought it was important that we can get her on the show. So we're going to bring her right on, and we'll find out a little bit more about her and what she's doing. So here is Erin Benjamin. Maybe. I think she'll be right there. There she is. Hi, Erin.
Hi.
Welcome to Barstools and Bandtalk.
Thanks so much for being on the show, and I want to lob the first question because Dave's going to get me up to speed on what you are doing and what you are looking to accomplish. And out here on the East Coast, the word that seems to resonate with a lot of people is frustration, and not so much that things are closed down because we realize what's going on, but it's the sharing of information and how things are being communicated that I think people are getting very frustrated with. Are you finding similar things with what you're doing?
Yeah, it's really tough. First of all, thanks a lot for having me on. It's always great to talk to the East Coast. I'm a big fan of the land, the sea, and the music. So it's great to connect. Yeah, it's look, I mean, public health has been driving the conversation from as they should from the beginning, and it's been very hard to penetrate that public health sort of narrative, leveraging in Ontario, for example, our Ministry of Culture here, trying to make sure that our priorities have been inserted into those conversations, but it's not always a two-way street. And I think we understand that for the most part, that governments with public health have been having to make a lot of decisions very quickly. But sometimes it's in the absence of consultation, and that's definitely frustrating.
That's exactly it. And we started a petition here about 3 months ago, and we originally started this website or this talk show format, Erin, is a positive distraction, just to keep people, not focused on all the negative things that were going on, not just only in the world, but here in Nova Scotia too. We had a pretty, crappy year here in April as well. So this is kind of why we got started with this whole thing, but we started to realize that this format, this platform kind of could raise awareness a little bit. So we started this petition, to Sean's point, just to raise folks that had skin in the game, that had boots on the ground. They were involved in making these decisions. They were either business owners, bar owners, venue owners, or they were active musicians, or entertainers, that their voice wasn't being heard. So we ended up getting somewhere around 1,500 signatures on the petition, and it's stayed at a little bit right there. But I mean, like, we're not giving up, and we're here to support our friends in our industry. So, and when I found your website, it's like, holy mackerel, we're doing the same thing. So I thought it was really important to get you on, and I do appreciate you coming on here for sure. So thank you.
Oh, no problem. I mean, I think a lot of what we're seeing in terms of grassroots initiatives, I mean, coalitions springing up, new groups, lots of advocacy in different forms is really a result of people realizing that they do have skin in the game and wanting to have some control over the uncontrollable. And it's hard because, I mean, I really feel for everyone. We're in the same situation. I mean, I've spent the last year writing letters to government and talking to ministers and bureaucrats and trying to move the needle, make a dent, explain, prioritize, put our agenda in front of folks so that they understand the broader impacts of not engaging. Like what is the worst case scenario, and how can we ensure that we mitigate that to the best extent? And it's really hard. I think grassroots movements are like 1,500 signatures on anything is a huge accomplishment. So congrats. It's tough because, in the live music industry, we're in a situation where, first of all, our story has largely remained untold, right? economically, socially, culturally. Let's face it, the East Coast really gets it, which is the envy of all Canadians and people around the world. So you might be in a bit of a different situation, but generally speaking, it's hard to when we're in a crisis like we're facing today. It's sort of hard for government to prioritize arts and culture generally. Not to mention we're in the business of gathering, right? So right out of the gate in a pandemic, if you're in the business of bringing people together, you're at the back of the line for a bunch of reasons, because it's just inconceivable for a lot of people whose hearts are in the right places to get their heads around how, like, it's just not a priority. And that's okay. It's okay that we haven't been the priority, because I think everyone understands that the health of our, especially our seniors and most vulnerable, have to be prioritized. And all of us in our industry have been willing to do whatever it takes, really, to make sure that we're keeping public as safe as possible. So when we move through that, it's I think now, and I think the next couple of weeks and months will be really interesting to see how the conversation evolves and how we can start to influence public policy to make sure that we're really recognized for what we bring to the table, and that is this exponential, both indirect and direct, economic, social, and cultural impact.
Well, and and that's it's a great point, because people, we said this before. I think they look at us because it looks like we're having fun, that it's not essential. Yet there was two things that happened down here. Our platform started. There was another one called the Ultimate East Coast Kitchen Party, where people could go on and kind of have themselves performing. And they were two of the things that really got people through that few months that was locked down. I don't know if you feel this way. You nailed it. But I mean, they don't see us as essential, and they kind of see us as fun. And, they kind of give us the pat on the head type thing. But they don't really go to the people that are living it. They just kind of, I don't want to say dictate, but they kind of put the policy out. Down here, people were confused. We had bar owners calling us when they opened up. They didn't know what the rules were. Yeah. That to me is just not a proper way to conduct a business with the sector that brings so much to our economy down here, for sure.
Yeah, not to mention your visitor economy too, right? Especially on the East Coast. It's a really good point. I mean, I think that, organizations like the East Coast Music Association and Music Nova Scotia, and a lot of folks, especially in the province of Nova Scotia, have been doing a lot of heavy lifting for a long time. But again, it's that queue, and the queue is very long, and the queue includes frontline workers and long-term care homes, and then meat packing plants and food processors and farmers, and I find it really, like, I'm not arguing, and I never have. The Canadian Live Music Association has never said we need to be at the front of the line to help you fix this.
Sure.
And we never would. But we need to be in the line because because of those both direct and indirect impacts. So we've got artists over here, and then we've got all the businesses and the infrastructure that surrounds those artists and that ecology. And if we're not careful, because our work is so deeply and intrinsically connected to so many things like tourism and hospitality, if we're not careful, we stand to lose much of our cultural infrastructure in this country. And when that happens, the rebuild part of what we're going to be facing will be exponentially harder. And so our position has been, let's make sure we keep as many companies and individuals alive to surviving this as possible, so that we can hit the ground to the extent we can running when it comes to meaningful rebuild and recovery. And the other thing I would say is that there is a big difference between reopening and recovery. So in the live music industry, and I think in the sort of the mass gathering industry, and let's again look at tourism, hospitality, travel, and live events, that recovery phase, I fear, is much further off than any of us would wish it was. And so even more important that we're part of local conversations today to make sure that the timelines are understood, and that we have access to resources that will keep us, even shuttered, but alive to that point where we can really engage with meaningful recovery.
So what kind of feedback are you getting from the ministers in Ontario? Because I mean, you raised some very good points there. And I'm listening to what you said. It's like, it's true, because, and we never wanted to get into, a pissing match, if you will, with our government. That's not what we're here to do. I mean, nobody wants their job. I mean, who ever thought we'd ever see, a global pandemic in our lifetime? I mean, so you're right. Mass gatherings does sound like kind of a bad idea right now, but at the same time, if we don't take care of these, again, venue owners and artists, then they'll have to find something else to do. They can't sustain themselves that long without being able to do what they do.
Well, I think government in Ontario, we have a great relationship with our minister, Lisa McLeod, here at Tourism or Culture Heritage. No, the Ministry of, oh my gosh, it's just to say culture. The name changes. I'm sorry, I stumble over it all the time because it's very long, but she's got a big portfolio and a lot of stakeholders in the hardest hit sort of silo. And she's been fighting for us from day one. And I think doing a good job. We've got federally the Minister of Small Business, Tourism, Heritage. I think they're all understanding that the need is just so massive that I think it's where we've been trying to help them focus is on, again, the long-term impacts. So if we're talking about removing, like, the attrition here is shocking. We've been tracking venue closures across the country. We're up to about 85 permanent closures of what we would call primary live music venues. And I know for the three of us, it's heartbreaking. I can barely say the numbers out loud. But what that means ultimately is that we could potentially be losing generations of artists as a result. The domino effect of those closures alone will make it so much harder for us to do what this country has always done very well and what governments have focused on, and that is the dissemination of creative content. Ultimately, we grow that domestically, and nobody's better at this than the East Coast. We export it. But if we don't have that infrastructure to build those careers and have them develop in a really natural way, I fear we're going to lose a huge sort of layer of emerging artists, not to mention racialized artists for whom access was already difficult. So the care and feeding of this industry will, again, I can't say it enough, and I don't want to flog here, but we must pay attention to the cultural infrastructure in this country, lest we get to that worst case scenario, which we may not even be able to predict at this point, because I mean, so many people are hanging on by their fingernails. We don't really know the full toll or impact. We know people are leaving the industry to take other jobs. Are they coming back? We know suppliers especially are having to sell off gear. We know there are companies that are struggling, the freelancers, contractors who fell through the cracks in terms of federal relief measures right out of the gate and have had to completely abandon their life's work. Dip into family savings, find other industries and maybe do something similar or completely different. Will those people be back? Will we have the skilled workforce we even need? Will we have the supplies that we need? What if we're a festival, but you can't find tents? I mean, tents, gear, people to run the gear, riggers, lighting, sound,
That's right.
ushers, box office, you name it. It's so, when when we really unpack it, I think I think, and this is why we launched this campaign called For the Love of Live, and we can talk more about that if you like, but to really raise
Absolutely.
awareness of the true impact of COVID-19 on this industry, to help people understand that it's not, it certainly is artists, but it's not just artists who may decide that they simply have to do something else.
John?
Hit a lot of points there, Aaron. Last week, Neptune Theatre down here applied for a grant that the city of Halifax puts out, which is designed for these types of things. And I got in a little bit of a discussion with one of the counselors that basically said he didn't feel that HRM should be in the COVID recovery business. And my comment was, well, you guys didn't, you guys aren't missing any money. You didn't miss a paycheck. And now people are coming to you for help and you're giving us this line, which to me seems a little out there. And I think that's the frustration of a lot of people, is the lack of speed to which they're listening. Because let's face it, if you're in a government job and your paycheck is still coming in and you still have a pension and it's still going, your sense of urgency is not the same as the guy who, Dave and I promote all the time. He tapped 10 kegs of beer and he lost them all because they shut it down and he can't get his money back. So are you getting that same sense of frustration from some of the folks that you're dealing with?
Absolutely. I mean, it's hard. So many people are having a different experience. Like, we are not all having the same pandemic experience. I live in Ottawa. This is a government town. The difference for a lot of people is they're working from home, full stop. They have to, their kids are home and their partner's home and they're home. But the work continues and the paycheck flows and the pension's there. Now, I mean, it's kind of always, we don't get into the music industry for the pension. I didn't. Good thing.
For the pension?
uh, but I think we've all, those of us in industries, in any arts and culture industry, have kind of made that decision a long time ago. We recognize as we do the work because we're passionate about it, we love it, and we simply wouldn't be complete humans if we didn't do this. And that comes sometimes at a financial price, but this is again why it's so essential and why I'm grateful for the opportunity to talk to you both about raising awareness. I hope that some of the viewers and the listeners here who don't work in the music industry may just stop and ask themselves, especially on the East Coast, because it's such a part of who you are. Imagine if we just wiped out music. I mean, it's not going to go away entirely. Music will come back and it'll come roaring back, but at what cost? What will we lose? What will we lose forever? And helping, especially politicians, understand that fundamental difference. And I think some of the narrative coming out of the federal government has been like, okay, we've done our emergency thing, and now we're going to look at sort of, like the rebuild portion, and I don't see us as having emerged from like, there's still huge urgency in our world, and it's not. I feel, and I may be alone on this, I feel like it's just too early to tell certain sectors who are hardest hit that they should be done needing emergency money, and we're moving on now. Everything's going to be fine. And if the government measures haven't helped you, then maybe you weren't good at your job in the first place. I don't, that's not what they're saying, but it's certainly some of the stories.
Though. You're right. That's implied. And I hear what you're saying. Like, I hear what you're saying. You hear what you're not saying. It's like at some point we all know that umbilical cord is going to be cut. Not that $2,000 a month was great. I mean, it was nice to see, but for folks whose their whole identity is performing, is to travel, is to do all that kind of thing. Yet they have to have rent for their families. That's going to be $1,100, $1,500 a month, plus food, plus insurance, plus all the other expenses that they have. $2,000 didn't go that far. Plus the fact, and I know you touched on this on your website, and I really want to hear more about For the Love of Live. But it's the mental health part of it. You talk about the financial, but let's talk about the emotional stress that these folks have been under. They entertain for a living. That's been taken away from them. That's harder on their homes, perhaps their substance abuse, but who knows what's going on from there. But it's a real snowball effect. You're right. So I appreciate what you guys are doing.
I mean, it's a bit endless, and it's overwhelming when we think of it that way. And I think what it does, or what it could do in terms of opportunity for our industry, is really light a fire in terms of that storytelling that we have to get better at doing. Associations across Canada in our industry have been really focusing on research and data to try and put some statistics in front of government, because we know numbers really matter, and as they should. I think not that, I'm certainly not implying that this is our fault. Let me be very clear. But what we simply must use this as a springboard into our own future, and take a page from any other, really successful sector's book. Let's look at film and television. Although I know there were some changes to film and television in Nova Scotia not that long ago. So, but broadly speaking, film and television in Canada have been able to continue production throughout this pandemic, and they've been very smart about their advocacy. There's a lot of money in that industry, and they've been excellent at storytelling with government about why the economic spin-offs, etc. And I think we have a real opportunity, especially in live music, to make sure that everyone understands once and for all that we are a legitimate industry, that we are a major economic contributor. By the way, over $3 billion to GDP and 72,000 jobs before the pandemic. The global live music industry was poised to make something, and I hope I have this right, 36 billion in ticket revenue alone. We were on the way up. We know this is cliche at this point. We were poised to have our best summer ever.
That's right.
I mean, and those are just festivals. I mean, really, this industry was exploding. And what's important for everyone to remember about that is that artists who are touring artists earn by far the majority of their revenue from live performance. So back to your point, Dave, about the, it's absolutely, I mean, I want to say there's no one to blame here, and there really isn't. But what we have an opportunity now as a country is to really figure out really, smart next steps to make sure that we're making decisions that are not only based on public health, but are based on mental health. And I couldn't agree with you more. I'm starting to hear more and more stories that I can't even share because I won't get through the interview, that are just awful. But like all of this, the opportunity that our artists will give us. I mean, we've consumed more live music in the history than of ever in the last 12 months via online streaming, et cetera. And I think as a result, we've really, hopefully it's sinking in what our artists mean to us. I mean, sure, lots of us were turning to CNN too, but I mean, we were also turning to live music. Why is that? Why are we turning to music? Because it's who we are. It's in our DNA. It's what we need. There are things that we seek for comfort, and music is one of them. And there's no one who could convince me otherwise, because I'll give you an example. I produce a wonderful artist here in Ottawa who's a dear friend of mine. He's like a local hero. He's been playing music in town for years, and I produce his live stream show. It was twice a week, and we moved to once a week. And we've been using the shows to raise money for charity, and we've raised tens of thousands of dollars through this one live stream.
Nice.
But what happens on this show is, 150 people a night, and it's amazing. But what happens is these people talk to each other, and without fail, and this is just one example of one artist in one town on one night, they all say, "This is the highlight of my week. I look forward. This is what gets me through.
Right.
I haven't talked to anybody but you guys on the chat." Like it is so profoundly clear how meaningful live music is to people today. And this simply, we can't let that be lost on politicians and others in the future.
Well, and I think you nailed it when you said we're not looking for anybody to blame. We're looking for some people to listen, because I think that's important. And to what your point that you just made, Dave and I have a little sideline thing that we do where we do once a week. We call it the bullpen, where we talk about issues and people interact, on the feed. And you're right. There's some things that people would not normally say in a general setting that they're a little more comfortable. And people need it. They need this as, they need to get the normal back, but they also need to figure out all the stuff that they've been missing and figure out to have it, back to where, I don't know if it'll ever go back to where we were, but again, to your point, the recovery, we know last year's gone. We know right now is a little wacky. We don't know what 5 years is going to look like, but people like you and the folks that you have some very good information to share with these folks that need to listen.
Yeah, and as part of our campaigns, we launched, I'll just talk about the campaign a little
Yeah,
bit.
for love of live, please.
So on Tuesday, February 9th, 2021, the Canadian Live Music Association launched what we're calling sort of hashtag for the love of live. And it's really a fan-facing campaign to say, we miss you and we can't wait to see you again, and to ask people to share memories and stories. And if you're listening right now and watching, please use the hashtag and share your favorite concert picture, or your old concert t-shirt, or your ticket stub, or that memory of where you met your partner, all the things that our lives are so wrapped up in live music. When we start to really think about it, we're like, oh yeah, that happened at that concert. It's just amazing what's been happening as a result of this campaign. There have been tens of thousands of social interactions in less than a week. It's just been, first of all, very moving for me to see, and my whole team and all the folks who worked on this campaign. But most importantly, it's really shone a spotlight on the challenges that we're facing, and that was the point. And I think as a result of this campaign, one of the components was we released something called a live music recovery plan, where we're making 7 key recommendations to the federal government for the actions that they can take today and tomorrow to help sustain this industry through the crisis and beyond. And it's recommendations like those that I think will really, and they're not really expensive. Some of them have a price tag attached to them, but sometimes it's like, I could talk about this forever. I mean, the amount of money that's invested in arts and culture, sometimes it's a rounding error in a budget estimate. So we're not we're not at the same level of need in terms of financial investment as others. A little goes a very long way, as we all know in the music industry.
That's right.
But so the campaign, it has a bunch of components, and this live music recovery plan is one that we feel is a really fundamental roadmap for government to consider. And there are toolkits, so you can, if you're an artist, industry, or fan, there's some letter templates that you can use to send to your MPP or your member of parliament or your local MLA or elected official at the provincial level. And we're just encouraging folks to take a moment and express yourself, just like your campaign to get signatures, Dave. It's the same thing. It's like, let's hear from you. Does this
That's right.
matter? If it does, share a memory, share a thought, tag your local official or elected official, and let them know that this is important to you. Because again, back to that storytelling, which I always come back to, because I think that it's the thing that we've been working so hard on. Just making sure that everyone understands where this actually fits. And I'm really hoping, I said this already, that we become woke as a nation to how much we need our artists and the people who facilitate their careers. Because like, who are we without those stories? That sounds like a cliche, and especially on the East Coast, where there's so many incredible storytellers. I mean, some of my favorite artists, like Joel Plaskett or Ron Hines or Kim Stockwood or Dav Doyle, Great Big Sea, the ones I could go on and on and on. Rose Cousins, Irish Mythin, and I'm thinking of Nova Scotia artists as well. Like, I mean, and I know I named a couple, but like, these people are the soundtrack of my life. And I don't pick that apart. I don't peel off the music layer. It's connected to every decision I've made as a human being.
Yeah.
Anyway, we the three of us drank the Kool-Aid a long time ago. But
yeah, absolutely. 100%.
But for a reason.
But what's so great about this? What's so great about this in this conversation is, we've been talking about it we've been talking about this for a little while, and it's nice to hear somebody that's from away kind of sharing the same thing that our little group has been sharing. So I love what you're saying, because it's again, there's a lot of solutions you have that aren't expensive. You just want your voice to be heard.
Yeah, and once and for all, I think that I really hope this pandemic, and as I know it will create a lot of opportunities for us to push past some of our roadblocks that we've all endured. And I don't know if we're the same age, but let's assume we're part of the same generation. I mean, we've been railing against this stuff for a long time, and maybe what we have is, again, an opportunity to advance that conversation and to simply open minds to another way of thinking. We can't go back to where we were. The perception that arts and culture always have their hand out has never been accurate. It's been an excuse. It's been very easy to ignore. And because we're busy making art and taking care of the people who create for us, we haven't always prioritized those same sort of advocacy conversations that other sectors have been really good at. And so I think we're very committed to changing that. And we do the research to make sure that we have the tools that we need to help folks who maybe don't have that same emotional connection with art. Even though I know when everyone is pressed, we can get them there. Like, even if it's their kid taking piano lessons, why is that important that your kid take piano lessons? And sometimes I love to start there, because everybody's kid takes piano lessons, right? Like, or singing lessons or tap dancing. I'm going to turn on the light in the background because the sun is sinking here.
No problems. No. Nope. Let there be light.
Let there be light.
Erin,
But again, Dave, just one sec. Just again, you brought up something that's really interesting, because we had the great opportunity and the great fortune to interview a gentleman by the name of Russell Javers, who played with Billy Joel back in the day when he was, all those hits. And the whole interview, the one thing that Russell said to us, and it struck me, and it still does. Every time there's something that gets cut, the first thing that gets cut in any school, anything, is the arts, because they don't understand it. And so it's a removable part. And I really like what you're doing, because it does give a voice to the sector. And it shows people that, what, it's fun. Great that it's fun, but it's that age old thing. Find something that you love and do it every day. And it's not a job, right? But I mean, it's still hard work, but contributes immensely to our economy. So hats off to what you're doing.
Thank you. I mean, ask anybody on the planet, like, what do you think of when you think of the East Coast of Canada? What are they going to say? And I don't accept like the like colors of Cape Breton, like not the festival, Celtic colors, but I mean, honestly, they think of music, and that's an incredible calling card. And I know here's something I want to make really clear from my perspective. Like Erin Benjamin feels this way. Like whenever we talk to anybody, it has to be positive, right? Like really, this is the amazing thing about our campaign is that it was overwhelmingly like an incredible positive vibe, because I think part of our challenge is that we're perceived as whiners and complainers and negative people, and we're angry, and we bash government on social media. That should never happen, because it's just an education. It's a lack of awareness and a lack of understanding, and it's as if we were not the government or children and we're the parents, but we have to explain things sometimes in a way that can be understood, and that's our job. It's our job to take responsibility and explain until we feel we've done everything we can. And I believe that we'll have an incredible epiphany in this country about like our industry and those around us that are parallel or close to us. We're all waking up to the reality that we haven't done enough. And no matter how we feel, and it's not like everyone needs to agree with us necessarily. If it's just the economic argument, then we can make that. We can make that in spades. And I think it's just equipping our colleagues and making sure we're holding our elected officials accountable for everything right from the beginning of the process, whether it's election campaigns. I mean, I'm always talking about how to execute grassroots advocacy. So with city councilors, provincial officials, and federal, there are processes in place that we can influence. And it's very important that we do, and that we work together, and that we have this very sort of positive professional tone to what we do. And not that you guys don't, I'm not saying that. I just think sometimes it's very easy for, because we're passionate people, and because we're led by a lot of us by the artistic side of our brain, we can be emotional, and but this will call for sort of really rational, strategic relationship building, and it's totally possible. And I'm really excited about that potential in the future.
Well, musicians and entertainers will typically they wear their heart on their sleeves. That's common, you know what I mean? But I love your strategy, what you're doing, Aaron, because it's a little bit different, because you're not butting heads with anybody. You're just trying to get back in line. Just trying to get back in line. You don't have to be the first, because obviously there's an absolute need, with the older population and the folks who are most affected by this pandemic. But I love what you said earlier, is that we just want to be in line. We don't need to jump the queue. We just want to be in line. And I hate that term non-essential. And that's kind of what you're doing subtly, is you're letting folks know that it's essential, it's healing. There's properties that are scientifically proven that people will feel better after they've been emoted to, whether it be through film or through a song or through dance or through theater or whatever case may be. They need to feel good with themselves. Part of that is eventually when we can kind of, well, again, hang out in the masses again. We do tend to congregate in a live music situation. And until that happens, I mean, you said it yourself, you've been doing some live streaming. You see how that works. Maybe that's Sean and I talk about that a lot. That's probably, but part of the new normal will be part of the gig. Is that maybe you're not playing in a bar, maybe you're doing a live stream one night. So
Yeah,
maybe some good things will come out of this. I'm not sure, right?
for sure. Two things. The first is just to your point about live streaming. I think there'll be a level of hybridity between live streaming and live performance for a while. So venues and promoters and festivals will find ways to monetize live streams as part of a live performance package. That's down the road, but I can see that as being a way to help increase earned revenue, and meet the needs of people who are not comfortable coming out, or who prefer to consume content in that way. Let's face it, a lot like live streaming works for a lot of people. We might not. I always say careful what you wish for on the live streaming thing, because like I think there is a balance, and I wouldn't want to see government overemphasizing digital content, because it relieves us from the urgency around reconnecting and all of the businesses that are connected to that reconnecting. And so that's what I want to say next is the Music Cities work. I know Halifax was starting to explore this, the whole concept of Music Cities, which is this sort of theory or philosophy. There was a great report released in 2015 from our friends at Music Canada, which is the association that represents the major record labels in this country. The report was called The Mastering of a Music City, and it was basically a blueprint for municipalities to leverage their local music economy. So what is it? How do we, what does a strong local music economy do? Well, it gives people reason to live where they live and choose the neighborhood they live in. It attracts people. It attracts companies to come and invest in a community when there's a really, active, wonderful, creative nightlife. All of the things that are kind of, ubiquitous now we think of, especially Halifax, a city like Halifax. And so that the notion of Music Cities, I think, is something that will be more important than ever when we start to think about like how to, like imminently in the next 6 months, to your point, to both of yours, like what we're saying about, where do we fit in the recovery? We are so connected to that you're going to a show, you're going to the Carlton for a show, maybe you're grabbing dinner at Pizza Corner, maybe you took a cab from because you live on campus at Dal. I'm going to do all my Halifax things in my head here. And maybe you're having a drink somewhere else at the lower deck before.
Good job, Erin. Good job.
I love Halifax, but so it's all of that exponential economic activity.
Take it one step further. Say you're from
that
away
one
and
show
you're
at the
staying at the
Carlton.
hotel, right? Maybe you're staying at the hotel because you're from away and you flew in here, right? So there's the economic spinoff you're talking about is huge. You're right.
That's right. And you took that really long taxi ride down from the airport, although I'm glad the highway's bigger now. But it's really, that's exactly my point. And so that the economic spinoff, so all of the other businesses the government are interested in resuscitating, they benefit and prosper when live music is fully functioning.
Yeah, I don't know what else to say. I'm so glad that we hooked up and we were able to put this thing together because our interests are very much aligned. We've been doing this haphazardly for 10 months now. The same thing that you talked about, your campaign. We have well over 200,000 reactions and comments on our Facebook page where people are doing just that. They're sharing stories, they're talking about the history, they're going back to memories of remember this, and here's a picture, and it's very much interactive and people love it, so thank you very much for pointing that out because we're already doing it, we're going to keep on doing it. So we're going to encourage folks to maybe go into the hashtag For the Love of Live, and I'll certainly share that with you later on. Sean, do you have any closing points at all?
Well, I want to give Erin the floor here, and just if our folks that are watching this want to find out more about what you're doing, where do they go? How do they get involved? What do they do?
Thank you. So you can go to canadianlivemusic.ca and you can easily find the campaign from that point on, or anything else that we're doing, including research and our live streaming program. Which is a grant program, and anything else we've got going on, which is like endless at this point. I said to someone the other day, we never subtract, we only add. So there's a lot going on in the association right now, which is because it's all essential and really sort of, it's all critical work. But also the hashtag itself is very easy to find. So on any social media platform, if you just use the hashtag, and it obviously aggregates and groups conversations that also use the hashtag, so you can see everyone from the tenors to Biff Naked to I know our friends at Music Nova Scotia were using it, and we've got Troy Greencorn on our board of directors now from Stanfest and the DeCoste Center, and our friends at APA and Lori Gillis, and so many amazing East Coasters who have been really helping to lift this up. So you don't have to look too far to find the activity and engage for sure. And there are lots of great examples out there. But if I could say one thing, sort of in closing, that is, I think that the East Coast and Nova Scotia have always led us artistically. You've led us on the path that we've always been walking, and you've made it more beautiful and more clear and more important and more passionate and more poignant. the idea of losing any of that is unpalatable. Let me put it that way. I could use a bigger, a word that I'm trying not
Well-
to use. So it is just essential that for anyone watching this, if you can engage and shine a light on what is actually happening, you're going to make a difference. And I wanted to thank you in advance for doing that, and to both Dave and Sean for having me. And there are a lot of silver linings, and making connections like this is certainly one of them. I really appreciate being here.
Aaron, is
Thanks
this
so much,
the-
Aaron. I truly enjoyed this chat. There's an awful lot of stuff that you're doing, that we're trying to do, and it's just good that a lot of people are just trying to keep blowing the embers of the fire so that it'll blow up again really soon, right? So, thank you very much.
Total
Aaron,
pleasure.
Well, you said everything we wanted to say, and you did it in such class and such elegance, and it's like I really encourage folks to check out what you're doing with the Live Music Association, Canadian Live Music Association, hashtag for the love of live. Please join our group. Check out what we're doing, Barstools and Bandtalk. Like I said, you're going to find that we're all rowing in the same direction, and eventually, as a nation, the connectivity will be there, and we'll all, like I said, rise again. So, thank you very much. All right, we're going to take off. Peace out.
Thanks a lot.
Okay, I wasn't sure if I should leave some space for the end of this so you could edit or not.
Oh, we don't edit anything.
Okay. Gentlemen, total pleasure. Best of luck with everything, and let's reconnect at any time.
Absolutely.
Okay,
Thanks,
take care.
Aaron.
All right, thanks so much. You take care.
Bye now.
You too.
Bye-bye.